Okay, hi everyone, and hi again to those who I've already seen this morning. Can I just find out whether there's anyone here who is not involved in one of the 3 sister projects? There are some people, fantastic. So I will imagine there may be even others online. So I'm just going to say a few opening words, very few opening words. Most of the words will be said by my colleagues here. We're going to basically give a kind of summary of each of these 3, what we are calling sister projects, as a prelude to then an open discussion about some of the key challenges and questions that we think run across the 3 projects. The projects are actually kind of yet part of a family, I guess, in the sense that, and always were, in the sense that the way in which the call originally was formed and the response was one that meant that these 3 projects were connected, and they deal with different aspects of positive energy buildings and neighborhoods. But all of them, all of us, are still seeking to understand how we can, to quote, unlock the value. So I'm going to pass over to Annamaria, who is going to give us a summary of the first of the 3 projects, which is the Cultural-E project. Okay.
Most of you attended this morning session and already heard a lot about Cultural-E. I will try to be quick and to include other aspects that we have been working on in the project, just to give you an overall overview of the whole project and its view as regards plus energy buildings. So now we should work. Are we having some Slido as well here? I think so. So for the new online attendees, your microphone is muted and your camera is off, but there's a way, we will have several ways to interact through a poll, real-time polls, Q&A, chat box. And the workshop will be recorded. Here is the QR code to join the Slido. And as usual, we will have some warm-up questions for the newcomers. I guess some of the audience is already quite familiar with the system. And of course, we have, sorry about that, most of Cultural-E followers, let's say. But that's anyway a good chance to get to know also about the sister projects and to exchange some experience about those. Oh, okay. So we didn't add this option. But yeah, we have some impartial audience here. So yeah, I think we can give, you would like to give a welcome, or we can move to the presentation and use this chance to present ourselves, as you prefer.
I can say hi to everyone, and thank you for inviting us, and thank you for co-organizing actually this workshop. It's a great pleasure to work together. We call ourselves sister projects, and that means we got funded under the same call. And the call was mainly focused on building scale, but in Synikia we suggested also the neighborhood scale. So my name is Niki Gaitani, and I'm the coordinator of Synikia project, and I'm associate professor at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology. And together with me is Jaume. Salom.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jaume Salom, working at the Catalonia Institute for Energy Research. It's located in Barcelona, and I'm a colleague of Niki in the Synikia project. Okay.
And we are having also the third project coordinator online, Andreas. You want to say hi?
Hello from Austria. I hope you can see and hear me. I'm coordinating the third project, Access. I work at your Neighbourhoods Research Institute in Graz. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, so that's the agenda. We had a slight change, a last-minute change on the agenda. Sorry about that. We will have those 3 presentations managed by the project coordinators and partners, and bringing in the perspective of plus energy buildings from each single project. And then we will have an open discussion afterwards. So I will start. As for those who attending this online session, Cultural-E deals with climate and cultural diversity and applies this, try to apply this knowledge to the plus energy buildings. As mentioned, it was funded under a call from the Horizon 2020 projects on new developments in plus energy houses. And it's a 5-year project started in 2019. The consortium is made by 17 partners plus a third party. We have a combination of RTD partners, technology providers, and demo owners, social housing developers, private companies, private real estate companies, and private cooperatives, as well as public representative. The overall objective of the project is to define viable and tailorable technology concepts and business cases for plus and positive energy building. We believe that this, the implementation can be successful if we have an integrated approach that take into account in the technology selection and the interaction with the users about cultural and climate aspects. And here is, I showed many times today, and you can find it also here, what is the plus energy buildings for us. So we are focusing on the overall performance of the building at building level, and considering not only the fact that the plus energy buildings deliver more energy that it consumes within a year, primary energy, but it also enables to have a dynamic match between load and generation, enabling building energy flexibility strategies at the lowest carbon emission possible. And also we name it as plus energy building because they should provide an added value to the users with healthy and comfortable indoor environments, easy access to e-mobility, and also bringing in some co-benefits at community level. How we do this, we first map climate and cultural drivers, which are available on a map on our website online. And I would highlight that the map will include some information that can be useful for designers of plus energy buildings, such as models for occupant behavior, and then some aspects related to expectations of users in different contexts in terms of indoor environment conditions, as well as the drivers we identified for each energy culture. We are redefining a thermal comfort zone, addressing several climate diversity factors. Here is a graph showing and resulting from an analysis the partners did on an existing database of thermal comfort sensations against operative temperature. And as you can see in the different countries, the perception at the same operative temperature level might be quite different. So we are working to also redefine this. Then we are working to understand the variables that users bring into buildings. It was mentioned before by Ralph. We are taking in several interviews with building users that will inform better the way we shape the user control interface of the house management system of this kind of building. And along with this, there are several technology developments ongoing, which have been presented this morning. Cloud-based house management system, use of smart air movement, active window systems, and decentralized packet heat pump, as well as strategies for building flexibility. And then we are trying to give a value or to provide guidelines and methodology to monetize and to give value to the co-benefits that plus energy buildings can bring at household level, such as improved indoor environment comfort conditions, lower cost of energy, lower maintenance, etc., and at community level with with the improvement of the overall health due to the lower emission and improvement of social welfare as well as the reduction of energy grid congestions. Here are our demo cases. So we will demonstrate the solutions and methodologies developed in 4 demos for building around Europe. They are all multifamily residential buildings with different kind of ownership. And I will be glad to present them in more details in our next events. Their construction is starting or is going to start in the next months. And thank you for your attention. Next one.
I can use my. Yes. I understand why we call ourselves sister projects, because I see some of these topics are relevant for Synikia too. And let me start by explaining the name. Synikia is actually a Greek word and it means neighborhood. It also syn stands for plus and ikia, homes. So we are suggesting sustainable plus energy neighborhoods. So our mission is to enable a large-scale deployment of sustainable neighborhoods with a surplus of energy produced by local renewable energy sources. So the project was funded under the same call and has a duration 4.5 years. We are in the middle of the project. So here you can see our consortium, 13 partners from 7 countries. NTNU is the coordinator from Norway. And we have 4 large neighborhoods in 4 different climate zones. So we have a demo neighborhood in Norway, 1 in the Netherlands, 1 in Spain, and 1 in Austria. and many good partners that complement each other with their skills and expertise. So our mission is to, as I said, to increase the share of sustainable neighborhoods with a surplus of renewable energy in different contexts, climates, and markets in Europe. And we have identified 5 focus areas: decentralization, neighborhoods as providers of energy and flexibility, and also sharing of energy and infrastructure. Democracy, it has to do with the users and how we engage the user, even from the design phase, but even further on when we construct and we have the users along this journey. Decarbonization, we are focusing on low carbon emissions and integrated design. I said design, yes, it's architectural, good architectural and spatial qualities, and also digitalization. We foresee neighborhoods that might be connected to a hub, so actually they can share energy. So we are talking about communities, energy communities, as you know. So our concept relies on it's an interplay between energy efficiency, energy flexibility, sustainable behavior, and good architectural and spatial qualities. And we want to demonstrate these qualities as in different climates in Norway, and as I said, in Netherlands, Uden, in Salzburg, in Austria, and Barcelona, Spain. So here you can see briefly our demo neighborhood in Fredrikstad. This is the south of Norway. And there we are developing 56 housing units connected, establishing a neighborhood energy system. And we have a number of innovative approaches connected to each of these demo. And also we are looking into sustainable, social sustainability. How do we engage the tenants and the users of the houses? And then we move to the Netherlands. This is the demo neighborhood in Uden. It's a project that was recently finished the construction. So we will start the monitoring with 39 housing units and innovations such as digital twin at the neighborhood scale, energy flexibility, meaning load balancing at building and neighborhood level. And we also see here the social beautiful concept, introducing ambassadors so they can follow the process and also create groups with the tenants and support the good use. I mean, because it's not only about developing a highly performance building and neighborhood, it's very important to have the users on board. And then we move to the south, and this is the demo neighborhood in Barcelona. 38 housing units, energy sharing with the neighbor buildings, and innovative public procurement. And we also see we are looking into an energy manager at the neighborhood scale. And here you can see our demo neighborhood in Austria. It's a very large demo with 230 housing units. And it's about integrated energy system. We are exploring the concept of energy community and user behavior assessment, but more innovations. So here I just add some nice illustration of our innovative approaches, starting from the integrated energy design at the neighborhood scale, looking into business models for sustainable plus energy neighborhoods. We have the Synikia cloud hub, digital twin at the neighborhood scale, smart charging. We are also looking into policy, and that's why we're here today. It's a place to communicate what we do, but also to see what is lacking when it comes to communication, to policy and regulations, especially to support the positive energy buildings and neighborhoods. And users, we develop strategies and tools for how to engage the users, either with some app on the phone that can give us feedback, or inviting them to participate in the design from the beginning. So all of these 4 demos will be designed, have been designed actually, constructed, and then we have a year to monitor and assess, did they really reach this plus energy level? So what is a sustainable plus energy neighborhood? In this neighborhood, we are looking into the optimization of energy efficiency, so highly energy efficient buildings, renewable energy production at local level, and also flexibility. So it's integration and optimization. And here you can see briefly our definition. This is how we came together with the two other projects. We were talking about positive energy buildings. Is there an harmonized definition? We need to have a consolidated definition. So this is how we started the discussion. So in Synikia, we are looking into building, but also neighborhood level. So a sustainable plus energy neighborhood, what we call SPEN, is a highly energy efficient, energy flexible neighborhood with a surplus of energy from renewable sources. So a SPEN is embedded in an urban and or regional energy system. It's driven by renewable energy. It enables the increased use of renewable energy, and it's about sustainable energy production, consumption, mobility. We use advanced materials, but local renewable energy sources. But we also look into housing affordability, indoor environmental quality, and well-being for the inhabitants. So here you see the energy balance. We were talking about the boundaries, where to set the boundaries, the system boundaries, which are the metrics in the energy balance, but also how we include the users and what do we calculate when we say it's plus, that we produce more energy that we actually need, and how this can support the neighborhood, because we are suggesting the energy sharing. Yes, so we have developed an evaluation framework. We worked well with IREC, and we have a number of performance indicators to evaluate the neighborhood at the building, but also, starting from the building, going to the neighborhood level. So we have indicators about energy, environment, social aspects, flexibility, and economic. So it's also about the cost. But Jaume will give you a quick overview of the framework.
Thank you, Niki. I will give a brief overview. As said, Niki, our concept comes that starting from the building level and then going to the neighborhood level. Okay, then, and what do we need an assessment framework? Because we need also, when architects and engineers and planners need to design, they need to assess how will be the performance of the buildings and the neighborhood. And then we need some framework in order, and some metrics in order to compare which is the objectives and that we really achieve during the design process, but also in the operational phase of the buildings. Then which are the main objectives in our sustainable positive energy neighborhoods framework is about, we look obviously at the quality of indoor environment. Then buildings needs to be a good indoor environment for the people in order to be a healthy spaces. Also that we need to look at the energy performance and the greenhouse gas emissions, and which is the carbon footprint. We have to manage all this renewable energy local production in order to have this interaction between the buildings in the same neighborhood. That means enhancing flexibility. And also, there are two other important aspects that we need to consider. We need to consider with the money will be the cost of all doing these designs, and also with what we cannot forget about the users. And we need to have a set of indicators in order to assess which is the social aspects that needs to be taken into account. Otherwise, our buildings will be not used efficiently, and as we know, that users and behavior of the users has an important role in the type of buildings. Then we need a multidimensional perspective. Then that becomes to have these several categories, which is the first one is about energy and environment. Then we look at the energy performance, we look at the carbon footprint. Then there is other one about smartness and flexibility, how the buildings are managed, how these assets that we have in the buildings, meaning batteries, meaning the thermal mass in the buildings, can be used in order to be flexible, in order to share energy with other buildings in the same neighborhood. Other aspects is related with economy, how this is much cost to do to design this type of buildings and to construct, and in order to make at least say similar costs that the other buildings designed within a traditional perspective, to incorporate all the social aspects and take into account the indoor environment quality. Then these 5 categories it goes into the concepts that Niki has explained before. That is design, democracy, digitalization, decarbonization, and design and well-being. Then we have a comprehensive documents in order that you can look forward for more detailed and detailed description of the indicators and if the categories. We have at least in total 44 indicators, and then also there are a lot of about which is the exact definition of these indicators, guidelines also how to implement both in the design and the operational phase of the project, and also additional materials as surveys and checklists in order to perform this assessment in the buildings and then in the neighborhoods. Okay, I think it's finished with our presentation, and it is the time to thank you for your attention and then give the word to the other project.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. So I'm happy to introduce you to Access. Niki already mentioned the topic of energy communities, and we even have a bit more focus on this topic. I myself, I'm involved in several buildings projects, but also in several projects on energy communities. And there's some overlap, some conceptual synergies, but also differences. And I will briefly present Access and also elaborate a little bit on how the energy community concept can accelerate the deployment of PEBs and PEDs. Next. Yeah, also we started in 2019 because we are a sister project. Access means flexible, user-centric, energy positive houses. So we are not only energy positive, but flexibility is also key. And we're developing technologies or technology packages, how nearly zero energy buildings can be transformed into PEBs. With 21 partners from 8 countries, and as the other projects, we have 4 demos in 4 climate zones. Next. We have 1 demo in my city of Graz. It's an abandoned industrial area, and a mix of residential and office building is emerging. The key technological innovation is here multifunctional facade. It's a facade that can produce PV, that can cool, heat, and insulate. And we see a possible high replication potential in the context of the renovation wave. The building is existing, and we're just testing 1 floor. We're testing how to best mount the facade elements on the wall in the 1st floor at the moment. In Hasselt in Belgium, we have a social housing complex. And here we have PVT and a high efficient heat pump, ground source heat pump. And we have a very small wind plant on the top of the roof. In Helsinki, we have we're just drilling an 800-meter borehole with a multi-source high efficient heat pump. And in Spain, in Granada, we are aiming to integrate and optimize the interplay of conventional technologies like PV, geothermal heat pump, e-mobility. In all of the demos, we don't only consider the building, but to a certain extent also the neighborhood. And the aim of all of the demos is to take the first steps to create an energy community. In Helsinki, for example, our demo building and neighboring buildings want to create an energy cooperative. In Spain, the regulation on collective self-consumption, it's far advanced, and we want to test it. In Hasselt, the aim is to optimize flexibility on site and sell surplus flexibility to the DSO. And in Graz, we're developing an app that the energy consumption and the load profiles can really be optimized to distress the grid and generate benefits to the DSO. Next. Our definition is not so much different than from what you heard before. So, of course, energy efficiency is key. A PEB should produce more energy than it uses over the time span of a year. High self-consumption rates, but of course also high energy flexibility, high quality indoor environments, maintaining the comfort and well-being of the building occupants, as in our sister projects. And it should be adaptable to integrate new technologies later, for example, electric vehicles. But if I look at these elements like self-consumption, energy flexibility, these are similar use cases that are also being discussed in the context of energy communities. Next. So far, technologies exist, at least some, but we need concepts to integrate technologies. This is not always working well. And there are no clear business models for PETs, for positive energy buildings or positive energy districts. And one main hypothesis of success is that the clean energy package and all the new regulatory spaces enabling, for example, to sell small-scale flexibility on markets, enabling to better make use of centralized infrastructure via energy sharing, that the new regulatory spaces could accelerate the rollout of plus energy buildings and districts. Next. Elements for value propositions in plus energy building business models, of course, energy efficiency, renewable energy technologies integrated into the building or on the site, but of course, the optimization of energy demand and supply during the operational phase, flexibility on site, but as I mentioned earlier, flexibility to the grids and ability to maintain the quality of the services. As soon as you try to optimize on-site, as soon as you try to shift loads, this can also create discomfort to residents. You interfere in habits, in households. We saw this from past projects. So we need to understand how we can optimize energy flexibility and not interfering into the comfort zones of residents. Next slide. Business model approaches. In the middle, you see possible actors, industrial building owners, commercial building owners, social building owners, as we have in one of our demos in Hasselt, housing companies, but of course, single family building owners. And above and below, you see some business propositions like renting of place for renewables, leasing of renewable energy technology, life cycle contracting, aggregators, energy management, emerging and improving ESCO models, one-stop shops, and In principle, except of industrial building owners, energy communities could integrate all of these business propositions. Energy communities could be like an umbrella to integrate not only technologies, but also value streams and business cases. Next. There are two types of energy communities in a clean energy package. We have the renewable energy communities that have to be localized, and each member state had to define the boundaries of renewable energy communities. And as we're in Europe, every member state did it differently. And then we have citizen energy communities that have no geographical boundaries, that are treated as market actors. And to a certain extent, renewable energy communities are reflecting the concept of autonomous PEBs, because they're very localized, and citizen energy communities could facilitate virtual PEBs. But as I mentioned earlier, PEBs are just perfect for energy communities, because you can install centralized infrastructure, you can share, and this improves the business case. So sharing and optimization on site, flexibilities to markets. In plus energy districts, the roles of the different actors are often very unclear, and the EU provisions for energy communities assign clear roles, responsibilities to different actors, and can possibly help to create a value chain. So we have the more technical concepts of plus energy buildings or districts, but in addition, we have a new regulatory space and possible new organizational formats. Next. But as I mentioned, it's difficult to find blueprints how business models could look like in the context of energy communities or without energy communities, because the regulations are so different in each country. We have different socio-economic conditions, building traditions, climates. Of course, we have very different technologies that make sense in different climate zones. So what we aim is to elaborate on possible blueprints for different climate zones, and one general blueprint of a business model, and business models that are also to a certain extent adaptable to different regulations. And this is ongoing work in excess. Many thanks.
Thanks, Andreas. So everybody's been very quiet so far, and I understand there are still no questions online. So I'm going to be a bit provocative now and make a few statements, I guess, that will hopefully prompt a discussion for the remainder of this session. And I'll start by saying, look, this is the first time I've heard the three projects presented together like this, and I've already learned a lot just listening to our three colleagues. So four colleagues, so thank you all. But what I'm hearing is all of our language that we use to describe energy use in buildings seems to me to be invoking a consciousness about living in buildings. So phrases like user-centered, markets, paybacks, business cases, incentivization, getting them on board, optimizing, all of those phrases assume somebody wants to know and are actively trying to find out. But we're not, are we? We all live in homes. It's just not true. I mean, I know as somebody who's a homeowner, well, it's owned by the bank, but, you know, I pay the mortgage. When I got solar panels put on my roof, the logic I used was the same as everybody else. It will pay back in 3 years. 3.5 years, I think, was the phrase I used. It sounds reasonable. we all want to sound reasonable and rational. We all want to sound normal. We all want to do the right thing. There's very few people you ever come across who waste energy willfully. In fact, I'd go as far as to say almost nobody I've ever seen in all the hundreds of household interviews I've done over the years has ever suggested the idea that they would waste energy. They just use it differently. So the real dilemma I think that we all have is trying to think about really actually how energy gets used. And it's part of a set of unsaid rules, in a sense, knowledge, and particularly meanings. And those meanings are socially constructed. They're not made up by us. And what gets stuck, what gets used over and over again by way of a practice of how you do something, whether it's the washing up, whether it's keeping a room comfortable for a loved one, or whatever else it might be, that is something that is not what I would call consciously behaviourally driven. It just happens. How can we change what just happens? In a sense, I would argue that we have to collectively think about ways in which the rules, meanings, and materiality of everyday life shifts somehow structurally, systematically. But it's not one intervention that's going to do that. And the reason I use the phrase rules, meanings, and materials, it's stolen from Elizabeth Shove. Some of you may know her work as a building sociologist. And I'm simplifying this rather, but materials is, let's say, a third of the picture. So the technology, materials includes, obviously, the technologies, everything manifest in the house, in the home, in the dwelling, in the building. The meanings that surround that, which are dynamic and always changing, and as colleagues have said, are different in different parts of Europe or in different parts of the world, in different social groups, in different localities, in different climate zones. And so are the rule sets, whether they are regulations, whether they're written down in law, or whether they are unwritten rules, like, you know, you're not supposed to leave your baby in a room below, you know, where it's cold or hot. There may or may not be regulations about that, but there are definitely social rules. And they do vary over time. Not so long ago, it was okay to do something which it's now not okay to do. And in the future will be not okay again, or maybe something else will be okay. So how do we track all this stuff when it's hidden below the radar, when we don't talk about it? And I've, you know, tried to prompt people to talk about energy. I must say, going back to my own case example, if I'm in the pub talking to somebody about my solar panels, I'll talk about how they, you know, they work, they help me pay the bill, etc., but I never check. It took me a month to realize that the inverter had malfunctioned, because that's how often I check. I don't do what I say I do, because none of us do. You know, we all kind of depend on, you know, the logics, the rationalities of wanting to sound like we're doing the right thing in the right way. What I will say about all of the presentations today is they speak to a sort of set of demonstrations. I'm convinced that demonstrations are part of the solution. They provide us with this type of forum of experimentation, of openly asking these questions, which we have to do. They provide practical, what works and what doesn't work, practical kind of evidence. They provide us with a way to build coalitions across space, across different sorts of technologies and so on. And for me, I think I would end my comments here by saying my work in households has told me that we are all quite ingenious and disruptive, not intentionally, But I remember when there was a drought in Australia and there were rules about hose pipes and bans and so on and so forth. People were ingenious in keeping their plants alive. It's the same if we try to, you know, if we try to in any way shift the meanings, norms and practices by which we control energy in buildings. And as I said earlier in the session this morning, for those of you who were here, apologies for me repeating it, we know that the solution to this is neither creating automated systems within which we live where we have no control over the environment, and we also know that the opposite, i.e. completely user-controlled environments, are not the solution. It's somewhere in the middle. And the problem is it's not a single central point that we have to find, because there are so many different intermediary points that we need to find. There may be periods when I want my building to be completely automated so I don't have to think about it, and other times where I want complete control and be able to open the window, as somebody did earlier today. Because, well, so what? There were more people in the room than I was expecting, a bit stuffy, whatever it might be, or I just burned the toast, whatever it might be, you know. So I think the difficulty for us in designing buildings and thinking about communities is trying to get the materiality in such a way that it can become quite automated and it can be also flexible and controlled, and that we bear in mind that while it is useful to do studies at the individual and at the household and at the building scale, we have to be aware that and at the community scale for that matter, we have to be aware that all takes place at the social scale. Those meanings and rules are social meanings and rules, and they're derived from and to society, not just to the household, or not just to the community, or not just to the project. I also should say that I think in this change process that we're all involved in, and several people have mentioned particular practitioners or experts, you know, energy intermediaries, I think this is a key thing for us to think about. People have talked about champions and so on. Intermediaries, those who either intervene or make new meanings, link things up, mediate, whether it's knowledge, new forms of technology and access to them, or new social rules, are crucial for this work that we're doing across these projects. Okay, I'll stop there. Have I provoked you enough? Are there any questions? The floor is yours.
Or, I don't know, maybe.
Thank you. It is connected to both these user and social and community practices, and both connected with the previous presentations. I was guessing if in the Sustainable Plus Energy Neighbourhoods projects, you are thinking about a sort of gamification, I mean collaborative community games, so thresholds and scores, and you reach the score as a community, not as a single user, because you also spoke about an app, or you want to engage the users, and this could be a way to engage a user, not just as a user, but as a part of a community. So thank you. I was just curious to know it.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. Indeed, in Synikia, we are looking into this topic from different angles. One is through an app, which is because we are all quite familiar using apps all the time with our phones. So we are developing an app which is called Feed Me, and it's going to, the users will be able to express how they feel in the house, or if they are happy with their environment, and then we could probably try to give some suggestions, or when it comes to the energy use, or when it comes to the comfort in the house. At the same time, it's not only about digital tools. We are looking into organizing events and connect with the tenants. For example, in the demo neighborhood that we have in the Netherlands, they have a concept which is called social beautiful, and that means they try to do activities together, the tenants. I mean, they have common gardening, for example, or they organize some events at the neighborhood, so to get to know each other and also address aspects related to their buildings. They want to know more. In another demo neighborhood that we have in Austria, in Salzburg, there are but there is a team of social anthropologists and scientists working with the tenants, so to inform them about how they can save energy, but at the same time, what is happening in the neighborhood and how they can connect together. In other demos, we try to connect with them from the design phase, if it's possible, but it's not always easy to have the participatory design. I don't know if anyone else wants to.
Specifically, it's not about gamification. It's more about putting the tenants and the users in contact with the designers and with the teams than making, I would say, gamification. Yeah.
I have a general question for all of you. After all this presentation on this point of view about the different roles of social interaction and connection, connectivity, and so on, for you, does plus energy building make really sense only within a plus energy district, or is something that has own value by itself, but it could really be better within an integrated of a district? So, I mean, can we have a single villa energy plus and it's still a very good thing, or it would be a very much nicer and usable thing if it is in a integrated system like a district?
Yeah, well, just to give a bit of background on why plus and positive energy building are being pushed forward, is the main aim is to integrate them into the current building stock, and also to somehow compensate for the energy that other older buildings or buildings that cannot be deeply renovated cannot have. So the plus should somehow compensate the negative of the neighborhood buildings. So I think here we're talking about different scales, but both make sense and needs to be combined together. I don't know, Niki, if you want to add something.
Yes, it's not that we are focusing only on the plus. For example, we said in Synikia sustainable, the sustainability is very much important, of course, and we are looking into different levels of sustainability. Andreas wants to add perhaps something. So it's mainly social sustainability, and we have the advantage, I think it is an advantage to do that at the neighborhood level, because for example, it's also not possible, as Annamaria said, to, let's say, renovate all the buildings and become nearly zero on net zero or even plus. So we see these synergies. We see the buildings connected, and we also see the social dimension. It's about how we can share the energy, but also give a flexibility to use the energy in different, it's about load matching, but then again, the grid interaction. And yeah, so it's mainly about synergetic approach and addressing different levels, but mainly we are looking into the users. It's the neighborhood, how to make a neighborhood, we say sign, looks better and support each other. This is the concept of sharing. It's not only energy. We share infrastructure, we have common spaces, we can share the garden, and we suggest activities together. And it's the way to address the climate change, how to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, and this is how we see it's the way forward.
I think Andrea wants to say something.
Yes, Andreas wants to say something, and I got a question.
I completely agree. Sharing energy locally is a social concept with many co-benefits, social cohesion, strengthening communities. But in principle, if a building has plus energy, it can also feed into the grid. Every more renewable production we have in the system is beneficial. So I think it's preferable to have it in the context of a neighborhood, but it's not a hard precondition.
Yes. Other question. Yes, so there is a question in Slido. What is your point of view that positive energy buildings are not mentioned in the EPBD?
Well, that's a good question. We actually provided our position paper on that once the EPBD was reviewed. Of course, we agreed with some point it is good to target zero emission buildings if we want to reach our 2050 targets of zero carbon society. But I think plus energy building can be a step forward and should be. So we are trying to push the EPBD forward on the next level, let's say.
Yeah, we're not happy, of course, if you ask how we feel. And we see, we tried to inform about the benefits. We see some bottlenecks, if I may say, in the regulatory framework. We have seen, of course, it's a dynamic process always. There are some positive messages that we get from the renovation wave or for the clean energy package or from the new European Bauhaus initiative. Yeah, it was also in the EPBD is the Article 25, I think, that is also suggests the neighborhood or district to be considered in the development of the new projects, but it says that this will be actually follow up in the next revision of the EPBD. Actually, now we see these regulatory barriers, and we are thinking that we should also focus at the national level, how each country can address these challenges. And there are some positive, happenings around in different countries, but in different ways. But this is what we see now. There are some positive and negative messages.
Well, we'll have to take into account, it's about targets, yeah? And I think what we are considering in the PBD is how they are, type of uses that are considered, that they exclude which are the electrical vehicles or the plug loads there. And it's something that means that when we talk about zero energy buildings in the context of the PBD, is not a zero energy building or a positive energy building because some of the users are not considered there, then that is about targets. And if as Andreas said in his presentation, technologies are there. Maybe technology is ready, and then it's all about how will be the ambition level on putting the targets. Yeah.
I want to make one comment, if I may. I think regulation is really key. In Austria, we have 9 provinces with 9 different building regulations. So there's not even a plan how to roll out the concept of PEBs in my own country. So it's very challenging. And
I could talk about the situation in Australia, which is where I'm coming from, which is completely different, where we don't even have mandatory disclosure of energy performance at sale or lease of buildings, et cetera, and that creates quite a different kind of knowledge landscape. I'm very encouraged by the idea of thinking at multiple levels about positive energy buildings with capital letters at the beginning, but and pushing obviously for particular programs, but also seeing the concept more broadly being embedded within knowledge systems, within the way in which technologies are taken up. And it goes to Annamaria's point about the hope being that these projects will lead to broader take up of technologies, practices beyond what we can currently imagine. So there's a kind of there's a set of different sorts of hopes, I think, about how and scales at which we might envisage outcomes from these projects being taken up. As you say, Andreas, it's very complicated if you take into account the diversity of regulatory settings that we have across, well, the European Union, but also beyond. Are there any other questions? We're running early at the moment, so feel free to have a crack. Yeah, I will start making some closing comments, but if people do have questions or you think of one, let me know. But I mean, listening to discussion today and the sort of the ambition to try to take account of scale, and that question you raised in the audience about whether. Which is the best option? Is it the building scale or is it the community scale? And of course, there's no single answer. Well, the answer is both, isn't it? The answer is both. We need demonstrations at building scale. We need demonstrations of how the community or neighbourhood specifically can also generate or respond to particular initiatives that makes sense, and particularly I liked, Andreas, your point about really about the collective endeavor of thinking about energy as a collective good, thinking about co-production and distributive aspects, and that could take place, of course, in a virtual community as well. If we thought about networks of buildings that aren't necessarily co-located together in a single development, but might be connected socially or through some more virtual community type of arrangement. So there are a variety of ways in which the new social rules, meanings, and, if you like, institutions of positive energy buildings will come into being. And I'm, you know, despite my earlier comments, remain very optimistic that that process is well underway, and will occur. There is no silver bullet. There's no one answer. There's not a technology answer. There isn't any kind of a societal kind of answer. There's no market answer. There are hundreds of different answers sprinkled across, and none of them provides the single silver bullet. But I think on that note, I might close the session, Veronica, if everybody's happy. And I'd like you to join me in thanking our 4 speakers today, and wish you all the best with the next stages of the sister projects. Thank you.
Many thanks, guys.